material crystal system. For example, if I choose a particular material system, it should have a unique crystal structure which I shall give as the input of my experiment to my computer. So once this input is given to my computer, I shall let my computer perform the theoretical experiment on this particular input based on the advanced theoretical method that I'm coming into. Once the calculations are done, I'll be able to fetch out any properties of the material that I'm interested in. Since in this case, we are typically interested into the electronic properties of the material, by doing the density functional theory based ab initio or first principle calculation, I can get these particular properties for any material. For example, here you can see we have found out the energy band structure and the density of states profile from which a lot of important electronic properties can directly be extracted. For example, we can extract out the energy band gap, the conduction band minima and the valence band maxima position, the characteristic effective mass associated in these band edges, and finally we can get the density of states around the band edges. So these informations is sufficient to assess the potential of my material for different electronic and maybe optoelectronic properties, optoelectronic application as well. For example, I'll be able to surmise how well my particular material fits in if I wanted to use it as the channel material of a MOSFET transistor, or if I wanted to use the same material system as photodetector. So number of electronic and optoelectronic applications, the potential for that material for those electronic and optoelectronic application, I can readily deduce. Now coming back to the point that we were discussing, as I have said, I have given the specification of my material system as the input and let my computer perform the theoretical experiment on my behalf. You might be wondering what kind of theoretical experiment is going on here. What actually my computer is doing here. My computer is basically solving a set of theoretical expression or the theoretical equation based on the fundamental understanding of the matter. And as I say, the fundamental understanding of the matter, as all of you would be knowing this fact, that the most fundamental description of the matter can be given in the framework of the quantum mechanics. So I shall represent my material system in terms of the framework of quantum mechanics, and I'll be able to predict each and every properties of that material system through this first principle or ab initio calculation. So now let us delve a bit deeper into this framework. But before I discuss this particular theoretical experiments in further detail, we need to brush up some of the concept related to the quantum mechanics, which will help us to understand the entire framework of the density functional theory. So the first concept that we should be looking into is the concept of a wave function. What is a wave function? It's a complex quantity, but a wave function represents all the information that can be known about a particular particle or a system of particles. So basically a wave function represents the state of the particle. Whatever we can know about that particular particle or the system of particles, all of that information is encaptured by the wave function. Now moving on, the next concept that we should be discussing, that is the operator. What is the operator? Operator perform a mathematical operation on a function. If I wanted to discuss this thing in a more generalized language, I shall say a operator eats out a function and spits out another function, right? Operator could be, one of the example of the operator could be ddx, the first derivative. This is an operation. Once operated on a function, let's say x square, it shall give back another function 2x. So it's like this. But this operator is of tremendous experience, tremendous importance in the framework of the quantum mechanics, because the quantum mechanics formulation dictate that for each and every observable quantity associated with a system or a particle, there would be a unique operator to represent that quantity. For example, if I wanted to know what would be the energy, the total energy of this entire of a particular particle, there would be a total energy operator that will be having in the framework of the quantum mechanics. Incidentally, that total energy operator is known as the Hamiltonian operator, which we are going to see at more greater details in future slides. The next concept is the eigenvalue. So what is eigenvalue? Let's say my system or my particle is at a particular state represented by the corresponding wave function, and at that particular state my particle has a specific energy. So this particular value of the energy associated with that state is known as the eigenvalue of the particle. To be specific, it's known as the energy eigenvalue of the particle. So in this way, for every observable quantity, it is possible to find a state where that particle or the system of particle have a specific value, and that specific value represent the eigenvalue of that particular particle or the system of particles. So at the same time, if my system is in a particular state where it have a fixed or specific value for a particular observable quantity, then the system is said to be in the eigenstate of that particular quantity. For example, if my system has a specific energy, as an example, we can think about atomic orbital. Each and every atomic orbital have a specific energy associated with them. So the atomic orbital represent energy eigenstate, and the value of the specific energy associated with the atomic orbital is known as the energy eigenvalue. Moving on, finally, the concept that we will brush up, that is the concept of ground state. It is relatively more straightforward to understand. The ground state represent the lowest available energy state of the system. And since it's the lowest possible energy state of the system, it is also the most stable state of the system, where the system is ultimately tries to settle in. So this basic concept will suffice to try to understand and get a basic flavor of the density functional theory framework. So let us now move on to the many particle scenario in a material. Because as you can perceive, in a material, there are a number of atoms that are periodically organized throughout the material. And with this number of atoms, there are also a large number of electrons associated with them. So basically, material is a periodical representations of the atoms and electrons. So that means if I have to describe my materials, I need to consider the many particle scenario to represent my material. So as a computational material scientist, if I wanted to perform my theoretical experiment on the material, as we have just discussed, to fetch out any particular property of the material, what I shall do? First of all, recall in the previous slide, we have just discussed for any physically observable quantity, there is a unique operator that can be representing that physically observable quantity in the framework of quantum mechanics. If I wanted to observe the energy of the system, there would be the total energy or the Hamiltonian operator associated in the framework of the quantum mechanics. So whatever property I'm interested to find out about the material system, I shall first construct the corresponding operator related to that particular property. It is as if I'm performing a measurement of that specific property on the material system, just we do through our experimental characterization of the material cases. So now if I construct this operator, then I shall look into my material system and try to find out the wave function which is going to represent my ground state of the material system. because ultimately every system tends to settle at its the most stable state, which is the ground state. So my material system should be also lying into its ground state, and I'll be trying to find out the wave function representing the ground state of my material system. So once I construct the wave function which describe the ground state of my material system, and if I operate the operator on the wave function, I shall be getting the eigenvalues which represent the measured value of that particular property of that material system. For example, if I'm interested to find out the total energy of a particular material system at the ground state, since it is in the ground state, it should have a specific value of the total energy. So if I operate my total energy operator on the ground state wave function of the material system, I shall get the ground state energy or the ground state energy eigenvalue associated with the material system, which I am actually trying to find out. Now, how to actually find out these things? Once again, I will remind you the materials are the periodic collections of the atoms. So if we solve the Schrodinger equation for my materials, I shall get my wave function which represent the state of the material system, the ground state of the material system. And once I know my wave function, it is quite straightforward to operate a specific operator on that particular ground state wave function and get the required value out of this theoretical experiment. So how the Schrodinger equation for the material system should look like? It should have a form something like this. What does this particular form implies? Here, this H represent the total energy operator or the Hamiltonian operator, which is operating on the wave function which represents the state of the material system, which represents the material system. And since it is a ground state of the material system, after operating the total energy or Hamiltonian operator on the wave function of the material in the ground state, I shall get energy eigenvalue E associated with this ground state of the material system, and also that energy eigenvalue E would be multiplied with the same wave function. So this is typically a eigenvalue equation, as we are aware of, and here the different terms are represented like this, as we have just discussed. Now the point to be noted in this case, if I look closely to my ground state wave function of this material, I see there are two type of coordinate associated with my ground state wave function. This is understandable because since my material is a periodic collection of atom, I shall need one indices to run for all of these periodically arranged atom, but I should need another set of indices as well, which should run along all the electrons that are present into this material system. So basically I am dealing with a large collections of the ions and electrons here, and the ionic coordinate, or for that matter the atomic coordinates, are run by this capital Rj, and the electronic coordinates are run by this small ri, right? So once we find out how the Schrodinger equation, how the time independent Schrodinger equation should look like for my material system in the ground state, the next stage would be to actually solving this Schrodinger equation and getting the wave function for my material system. But this is a no trivial task, because this very simplified equation might giving you an idea it is quite straightforward to solve it and get the entire wave function solved from this Schrodinger equation and fetch the energy eigenvalue associated with it. But in practice, due to the large number of atoms, to be precise, ions and electrons associated with any practical material system, this is a humongous task. And we need the series of approximation to simplify this extremely complicated problem to a manageable problem, so that we can solve the equation numerically and finally extract out a solution which closely resemble the practical scenario, which we can verify from the experimentally observed value for the different material properties by tallying them with our theoretically calculated values. So let us see how this particular Schrodinger equation can be simplified in a step-by-step manner, and how this problem can be dealt in the in the numerical framework of density functional theory. So the first step towards simplifying this entire equation would be to Born-Oppenheimer approximation. The Born-Oppenheimer approximation is rather a simple approximation which indicates that the nucleus are much heavier than the electrons. This is a common fact because all of us know the electrons are significantly lighter compared to the nucleus. So based on this fact, Born and Oppenheimer proposed that the dynamics of the atomic nucleus and electron can be separated. What does it means? It means the electron being having a very lighter mass than the nucleus, they can move around very fast, and their dynamics would be completely different from the dynamics of the heavily massed nucleus. So if I consider the scenario from the context of the electron, I shall see the electron sees the external potential of the static nucleus. Because of their 3 to 4 times lighter masses, the electron can zip around the entire material system where the atoms or the nucleus have hardly been able to move from their mean position. So it seems like from the perspective of the electron, the negatively charged electrons are placed into the in the field of a fixed positively charged ions which are fixed at a particular position in the space, because electrons are moving much faster than these nucleuses. So once we understand this difference of the dynamics, the Born-Oppenheimer approximation proposes the entire electronic wave function, which previously having the description of all the electrons and all the nucleus together, can be separated out into two separate wave functions. One will describe the electronic part only, another will describe the ionic part only. So this is called the decoupling of the wave function. Now the problem looks considerably simpler once we decouple the wave function for the electrons and ions. Now the only roles of the ions to provide a fixed potential, because these positively charged ions are fixed at the lattice position, and with respect to electron they cannot move around, so they will provide a fixed potential to the negatively charged electrons. So we have to find the ground state of the electronic wave function, this first part only, with respect to these fixed atomic coordinates. So once I look into this equation now, this previous equation, the Schrodinger equation, now if I focus my attention to the Hamiltonian, the total energy apparatus associated with this Schrodinger equation, this will have these three distinct parts. Let us try to identify these three distinct parts one by one. The first part represents the kinetic energy of the electrons. The second part represents the interaction between the positively charged and fixed nucleus and the negatively charged electron, which can move around the extent of the material. And the third part here represents the electron-electron interaction. Now it is this third part that makes the solution of the Schrodinger equation, makes it impossible to solve the Schrodinger equation analytically when more than one electrons are present into my system. Because in order to solve this Schrodinger equation, I need to know the coordinate of the individual electrons. But the coordinate of the individual electron is also depending upon the solution of this Schrodinger equation. So before I need to find out my end objective a priori to my calculation, what actually I'm trying to find out, that information should be with me beforehand. Only then I can find out what I am intended to find out. So this is a situation, this makes it impossible to solve the Schrodinger equation in a straightforward way, in an analytical manner, and get the uh, output or get the wave function straight away from the analytical solution. The only way we can solve the Schrodinger equation under this type of scenario is to solve this entire Schrodinger equation numerically. So once I look into this Hamiltonian, the electronic Hamiltonian, after Born-Oppenheimer approximation, I shall be able to note few of the points associated with this Hamiltonian. The first thing, this Hamiltonian would be operated on the electronic wave function. So this wave function itself are not physically observable quantity. As I have indicated at the beginning of this discussion, the wave functions are some complex quantity. They do not have any physical interpretation by themselves. So this is the first problem. We are dealing with wave function which itself doesn't have a observable entity. The next problem is, for n number of electrons, the problem becomes a 3n dimensional. Even if we are numerically solving this particular Schrodinger equation, I can see by the construct of the Hamiltonian, I need to know the position of the individual electrons. And since there are n number of electrons are associated, remember, for a material system, this n being a very large number, which is in the order of the Avogadro number. So I have to know the position of this n number of electrons. I need 3 coordinates for individual electrons. So my problem becomes a 3n dimensional problem, which even with the today's supercomputer is impossible to solve through numerical or numerical simulation or iterative solution process. So what to do? This is the second bottleneck that we experience while trying to simplify our Schrodinger equation and solve it for our system of materials. So how to deal with or how to tackle with this limitation? So this is where the density functional theory coming into the picture. The density functional theory framework offers a unique possibility for transforming this 3n dimensional problem into a 3-dimensional problem. First of all, why it was a 3n dimensional problem to begin with? Because we need to know the position of the n number of electrons using 3 distinct coordinate, x, y, z coordinate. So that is why it was 3n dimensional problem. But density functional theory saying that we don't need to consider the individual electronic wave function separately, but rather we would be considering the density of the electron as our key factor to solve the Schrodinger equation. So the density functional theory or the DFT framework transform this wave function into the electron density, so that this 3n dimensional problem transform into a 3-dimensional problem. Because now we are dealing with the electron density that has only x, y, z coordinate. At any point of the space, if I know the electron density, that is sufficient for me to solve the Schrodinger equation under the framework of the density functional theory. So how do I correlate the electron density with the electronic wave function? The electron density can be readily correlated by taking into account this simple fact that the complex conjugate of the wave function multiplied with the wave function itself represent the probability density of finding the electrons at any given position of the space, right? So based on this particular understanding, we can readily expand the electron density in terms of our many electron wave function. But still we are at problem. Why? Because still we are dealing with a many electron wave function. It is extremely complicated to construct and numerically deal with a many electron wave function. So what to do? Even if we can take it and transform into a electron density and feed that electron density into the DFT framework to solve the Schrodinger equation, at the begin with, this many electron wave function are causing problem. So in order to address this many electron wave function problem, we shall transform one many electron wave function into many one electron wave function using a formulation called Hartree formulation. So you can see here the Hartree formulation basically embed the physical understanding that the ith electron is a point negative charge in the field of other electrons, right? All the other electrons are providing an electrostatic potential field to my ith electron, on which I shall calculate the interaction between any two pair of the electrons and sum them up so that I can get the interaction between all the electrons. So that means basically the Hartree formulation allows me to write my many electron wave function as a product of many one electron wave functions. So here this coordinate R1 to Rn indicates the electronic coordinates from n number of electrons which are in my system. But the Hartree formulation, by doing so, implicitly assume that individual electrons are quantum mechanically non-interacting with each other. All the electrons or the individual electrons are quantum mechanically non-interacting with each other. Only then I can perceive my ith electron as a point charge in the field of the other electrons. But to begin with, I shall caution you, this is a physically flawed understanding of the electrons. The electrons are indeed quantum mechanically interacting system. For the simplicity or for the ease of solving this problem, we are explicitly assume something which is not the case in practice. So this particular Hartree formulation is violating the fundamental nature of the electrons, which are being quantum mechanically interacting electrons. So this problem will also be addressed in the framework of the DFT, which we shall see in the couple of slides. So once we do this, now the problem become manageable. If I construct many one electron wave function and from there I can get the many electron wave function, I can easily construct for the electron density at any position of the material. And if I construct the electron density, I can use it to solve the Schrodinger equation for my material system, which will give me my ground state and all the properties associated with my ground state. So let us see how to do it. First thing, once we make this particular approximation, the Hartree formulation, our electron density can be readily represented by this simple form. Once again, we have multiplied the complex conjugate and the original wave function for the individual electron and sum them up for all the electrons. That will give us the total electron density of our material system. Here this factor 2 is basically representing the upspin and downspin for the electrons. So now we have been able to represent the electron density in terms of a single electron wave function. Now, how this electron density correlates with the total energy of the material system, which we are actually intended to find out. It is well and good. I have just said the density functional theory dealt with the electron density rather than the electronic wave function themselves, but I haven't told you how this electronic density is correlated with the energy of the system. So let us try to see. This is where Hohenberg and the Kohn theorem coming into this picture, which is a significant improvement or the achievement in the theoretical or the computational material science, which allows us today's highly accurate and reliable framework of density functional theory, based on which today's density functional theory framework or computational material science framework is emerging as an independent technique for probing and characterizing material for which no experimental characterization can be done. Today's technique has been developed so much, we can put so much faith on today's technique that we do not need confirmation from the experiment itself. So, coming back to the discussion at hand, this Hohenberg and the Kohn theorem is the core of the density functional theory, which address the question how the electron density correlates with the total energy of the material system. There are two theorems. The first theorem tells the ground state energy E is an unique functional of the electron density. What is a functional? Functional is nothing but function of a function. That means if I know the electron density at the ground state, I can uniquely identify the energy of the ground state as well, because the energy of the ground state is directly related with the electron density, and there is a unique relationship exists between my ground state energy and the ground state electron density. So, but we haven't said how actually we should try to find out the ground state electron density itself. So there is the second theorem is coming into picture. So in this juncture, we shall identify the electron density that minimize the energy of the functional, that means this RHS will represent the actual ground state electron density. If I take a variational approach, if I keep on varying my electron density and measure my energy of the system, since I know my energy of the system and the electron density are directly correlated to each other, then eventually I shall find a minima of the energy or the minimum value of the energy, and for at that particular energy the electron density should be representing the ground state electron density. Once I know this ground state electron density, I shall find my ground state energy as well through the first theorem that we have stated here. So these theorems are the core of the density functional theory, which are known as Hohenberg and Kohn theorem. But still, it's a rather theoretical approach. Hohenberg and Kohn tells us how we can theoretically approach this problem and grade the ground state energy of our system based on the ground state electron density. But actually how we should do it? The practical process of doing this theoretically, that has not been elaborated by Hohenberg and Kohn. So this is where the Kohn-Sham formulation is coming into the picture. But before that, let me draw your attention to the first theorem once again. The first theorem said the ground state energy E is a unique functional of the electron density. So I can construct the energy as a function of the electron density. How to do it? So the first thing that should come to my mind, if my energy is a functional of the electron density, that means all the term in the Hamiltonian that we have discussed immediately after Born-Oppenheimer approximation can be expressed in terms of the electron density. The kinetic energy of the electrons can be expressed in terms of the electron density. The electrons-ion interaction can be expressed in terms of the electron density. Even the electron-electron interaction can also be expressed in terms of the electron density. Once I can do that, then I can construct the entire Hamiltonian in terms of the electron density, and by solving the Schrodinger equation using that Hamiltonian, I can get the ground state energy for my system. So the problem is not the entire total energy has a known functional of electron density. There are terms in the energy which has a direct correlation to the electron density that can be theoretically calculated, but there are terms associated with the total energy that doesn't have a defined terms or the known term with the electron density. For them, we have to make reasonable approximation. So that is why I express my energy as a functional of the electron density with the known and the unknown term. So that there are few energetic terms which can be directly expressed in terms of the electron density. There are few terms in the energy which cannot be directly expressed in terms of the electron density. So having said that, let us see what are the terms that can be explicitly expressed in terms of the electron density. The kinetic energy of the electron can be expressed with respect to the electron density. If I know the electron density of my system, I can readily determine the kinetic energy of the electrons. If I know the electron density of my system, I can know the Coulombic interaction between my electrons and the ions which are fixed at the lattice site. And finally, if I know my electron density, I can know the Hartree-like interaction between the electrons, where I perceive the electrons are quantum mechanically non-interacting. Once again I'm pointing out this particular approximation is physically flawed. It violates the fundamental understanding of the electrons. But nevertheless, we can take an interaction, Hartree-like interaction, where each electrons would be acting like a point charge in the field of the neighboring electrons. And finally, we can get the potential energy between the ion itself, because all of the ions are positively charged. There would be an electrostatic potential which will develop due to the interaction between individual ions and their neighboring ions. Now, these are the known terms which I can express directly in terms of the electron density. What about this second term, which is called the exchange correlation energy, which needs reasonable approximation to express them in terms of the electron density? This is basically the unknown terms, from where this particular unknown terms is coming into the picture. This unknown terms is basically coming into the picture when we consider the quantum mechanical description of the electron, where the electrons are quantum mechanically interacting with each other, but we do not know the exact functional form of those quantum mechanical interaction in terms of the electron density. So all these unknown that we cannot express in a straightforward way as a function of electron density, we are putting all those unknown terms into these exchange correlational energy terms, and we shall include all the quantum mechanical interactions in this exchange correlational term. So this will rectify the fundamental inaccuracy in the Hartree's formulation that I have pointed out number of times, that the electrons are indeed quantum mechanically interacting system. So the energetic correction that arises out of that quantum mechanical interaction between the electrons will be encaptured by this particular exchange correlational energy term. Now, saying this much, the next step towards this density functional theory formulation is to address how practically solve the Hohenberg-Cohen theorem so that we can get my ground state energy as a function of the ground state electron density. So this is where Hohenberg and Cohen theorems giving us the basic direction. We have to minimize the energy with respect to electron density. Once we do that, we can get the ground state electron energy. But it doesn't tell us exactly how we are supposed to do that. This is where the Cohen-Shum scheme is coming into the picture. And this is the last slide on the discussion of the density functional theory theoretical framework. Here, the Cohen-Shum scheme indicate we have to individually solve the Schrodinger equation for a set of single electron wave function. So, my entire Schrodinger equation, we will adopt a form like this. You can see this psi I represent the electronic wave function for the individual electron. And if I run this index from 1 to n, I can get the n number of Schrodinger equation that I need to solve and get my overall energy of the system. Here, the exchange correlational term once again represent the approximated quantum mechanical interaction. We do not know how this interaction exactly varies with electron density, so we make reasonable approximation for this term and better the approximation for this term, the more reliable or accurate our density functional framework would be. So here Cohen-Sham represent or Cohen-Sham proposed a self-iterative scheme. Before that, let me just indicate one of the terminology. This set of single electron wave functions are often known as Cohen-Sham orbital, that you might see time to time in a literature related to density functional theory. So this self-iterative scheme tells us, if I choose a set of single electron wave function or the Cohen-Sham orbital, from there I can readily construct a trial electron density. So if I construct my trial electron density, and since I know the crystal specification, I know this V ion part, then I can readily calculate all the potential and the kinetic energy terms in the Hamiltonian as a function of the electron density from here. And as a result of this, I can solve the Schrodinger equation, and from there I can get a new set of Cohen-Sham orbital, and from that Cohen-Sham orbital I can once again calculate the electron density of the system. Remember, it's a self-iterative scheme. So once I get this electron density out of, after solving the Schrodinger equation, I can correlate or I can compare this electron density, calculated electron density, with my initial or the trial electron density. If they are matching closely, then I have indeed find out the ground state electron density of the system. My job is done and I can conclude my calculation. But if it is not matching closely, my trial electron density and the final electron density are different from each other, then I can feed this final electron density as my trial electron density and once again reiterate these steps. Once again, I can compare and find out whether they are matching or not. So I will keep on repeating this particular self-iterative scheme until and unless I get a self-consistent solution for the ground state electron density and thereby the ground state energy of the material system. So that is how our density functional theory frameworks work and eventually give us a consistent description of our material system, which, as I have mentioned, is as good as experimental characterization nowadays due to the continuous development in this field. As of now, I have presented a very simplified representation of the density functional theory without going into the details associated with this density functional theory scheme, but it should be able to provide some kind of basic understanding on the density functional theory scheme. So before I start with this hands-on discussion on the theoretical part, if the audience have any question, I'd like to take them at this point of time.
I request audience to raise the questions so far if there is any. As hands-on session is going to start, if audience are having any questions so far, you are welcome.
So shall I proceed with the hands-on session then?
Yes, there is no questions so far. We request Dr. Shan to go on with the hands-on session. Please.
Thank you. So let me come to this Quantum Espresso and Burai hands-on session. So this open source Quantum Espresso package, which employs a pseudo-potential based plane wave DFT calculation package for electronic structure calculations of material. So not only the electronic structure calculation, the Quantum Espresso provides us a complete theoretical framework based on DFT by which we can calculate any intended properties of the material. So this is the site. If the participants are interested, they can go to this particular site. All the details regarding this nice open source software Quantum Espresso would be found into this particular link. Just to give a brief description, the Quantum Espresso is basically initiated in collaboration with a different institute of repute throughout the globe, and they have kept it strictly non-commercial for the benefit of the global research community. So those who wanted to learn and start working on the computational material science domain, it is always advisable they should start using the Quantum Espresso from the beginning. And if then they want, they can move on to any commercially available density functional theory packages like ATK Quantum Wise or VASP. So one of the glitch in this Quantum Espresso package is it's a very powerful package, but there is no good visualization tool available for the Quantum Espresso until and unless this open source Burai GUI has been developed by Professor Nishihara and given for the research community as well. So today we are going to use this Burai open source tool, which will employ Windows based as well as Linux based implementation. Also, it has an inbuilt Quantum Espresso engine with it, and due to a very strong GUI that is associated with the Burai, we don't have to go into the extensive coding that are usually associated with the Quantum Espresso package. And that is where most of the beginner sometimes got frightened by this coding. So Burai is, in my opinion, I have been working in this field for around 5 years or so. In my opinion, Burai is a very good starting point for the beginners to start with, get some understanding on the first principle based material simulation or the computational material science calculation. Once they get a preliminary idea on the field, they can then directly install the Quantum Espresso in their respective machines and start working on it. So without further ado, let me start with the Quantum Espresso and Burai tutorial. But before that, I would like to give one example of the calculated properties of the material. What is it as an electronics engineer? What it is actually we are intended to achieve through this computational material science simulation or material simulations. Let me take the example of a emerging two-dimensional material, which is gallium selenide. So this is the typical crystal structure of the gallium selenide. Here we can see this is a bilayer of the gallium selenide. There are two layers of gallium selenides associated with it. In a single layer of gallium selenide, as the picture indicates, there are two gallium atoms, and in the corner two selenium atoms are associated. So if I look into the crystal structure from the top, it shall look like a hexagonal structure where the gallium and the selenium atoms are arranged in a hexagonal honeycomb structure in an alternative manner. But if I look into the structure from the side view, I shall see the individual layer of atoms are distinctly represented like this. So as you know, in a 2D material, in a given plane of atoms, or a given atomic layer, all the atoms are bound together by a strong covalent bonding. But between two layers, there are weak van der Waals interaction that holds the layers together. So that is why you can see there are no bonding forming between this top layer of gallium selenide and the bottom layer of the gallium selenide. Now, once we give this specification of the crystal as input to our calculation, we can find the energy band structure of the gallium selenide. This is the typical energy band structure of the gallium selenide, where the energy band structure is represented in terms of the atomic orbital projection. If I wanted to know which part of the energy band structure is constituted by which atomic orbital, this kind of analysis will provide me that particular picture. So you can see here, all the band edges are having characteristics or unique contribution from different atomic orbitals. Here, the minima of the conduction band is situated close to the gamma point, and the maxima of the valence band is situated between gamma and endpoint, right? This is the valence band maxima, this is the conduction band minima. But for this particular material, we can see there are a number of conduction band minimas that are very close in the energy. So while defining the conduction band minima and valence band maxima for this material, I need to define three distinct conduction band minima in gamma point, M point, and the K point of the Brillouin zone. At the same time, I need to define the valence band maxima between gamma to M point as well as K to gamma point. So next thing that we can find out, I mean, as an example, I'm telling you, the electronic wave function at different conduction band edges and valence band edges. And here we can see, although the electronic wave function in the valence band edge, two valence band edges are very similar to each other, the electronic wave function at different conduction band edges are very different from each other. And the reason would be quite clear, because each of these conduction band minima are having unique or the characteristics contribution from different atomic orbital. None of two conduction band minima having similar contribution from the atomic orbitals. So this is from one of our published paper. So this is one of the example how we can analyze the materials and at a extreme details, and this type of analysis is not possible through experiment. There is no experiment available that can give me an understanding of the electronic wave function near the band edges, nor the atomic orbital projection at different position of the energy band structure of the material. So for this information, there is no other way but to perform the computational material science simulation. So the material simulation through computational material science technique using DFT. But once we perform this particular calculation, we can readily get the energy band gap, the effective masses, the density of states, all these parameters that can be experimentally observed. So this is the strength or the beauty of the computational material science simulations, where we can get all the properties, theoretically calculate all the properties that can be calculated experimentally, as well as we can offer substantial amount of data which cannot be acquired through experimental techniques. So moving ahead with the Burai hands-on. So for today's hands-on, our objective would be to calculate the energy band structure and the density of states of a 2D material, which is the first 2D material, graphene. I think for this particular case, I shall be showing you the band structure and the density of states for a molybdenum sulfide instead of graphene. So how to define the crystal structure? As we have said, the crystal structure would be our basic input for this first principle or ab initio calculation, how to define the crystal structure. We can download the unit cell specification of any material from a nice website which is called Materials Project Library. Here, almost all the material specifications are available. We just have to go and download them from the Materials Project website. The steps that we need to perform: first, we have to download the executable of the Burai and install. Based on your operating system, you can take the executable for Windows or for the Linux and install them accordingly. Next step would be download the unit cell structure of the materials that we like to simulate and find out the properties of interest. Once we download this, we can take the downloaded zip file into our working directory of the Burai, and from there we can perform the SCF calculation followed by band and density of states calculation and compare the simulated results with the literature. So let us try to do that. So the first thing would be how to download Burai. It's pretty simple. I shall only write Burai and make a Google search. You see the website for this open source software is coming directly after searching. So from here I can go into the download part. In the download part, you can see there are download executables are existing for Windows, Mac, and Ubuntu, all three operating systems. Based on our typical operating system, we can just download the executable, and with few clicks we can install them. Once the installation is done, then the next step, we can go and find out the unit cell specification or the crystal structure specification of the material system that we are interested to simulate. For an example, I wanted to simulate the molybdenum disulfide. Before that, let us try to find out what is molybdenum disulfide. Molybdenum disulfide, just like this gallium selenide, is also another 2D material which is having an intrinsic band gap. And after graphene, these are the most explored 2D material family, which belongs to a family of 2D material known as transition metal dichalcogenides. Since molybdenum is a transition metal, the name coming from there itself, there would be one transition metal covalently sandwiched between two chalcogen atoms, which are sulfur or selenium. And the transition metal could be either molybdenum or tungsten, like this. So, molybdenum sulfide crystal structure. Let us try to see how the crystal structure of molybdenum sulfide look like. This is a typical crystal structure of the molybdenum sulfide. Here we can see this one is one molybdenum atom which is covalently bonded with other molybdenum as well as sulfur atom and forming a single atomic plane. This is a single layer of the molybdenum sulfide, which can be extracted out from the bulk material molybdenite. Once again, if I look into this particular material from the top, it shall take a hexagonal crystal structure where molybdenum and sulfur atoms are alternatively placed in a hexagonal honeycomb structure. And from the side view, it should be looking like this. So this is the material that we are going to simulate today and find out the energy band structure and the density of states. So we will be trying to simulate the monolayer of the molybdenum sulfide. One of the beauty of these TMD families, this type of 2D materials, they show a very interesting property in the bulk or few layer configuration. They are acting like an indirect band gap semiconductor, where the conduction band minima and the valence band maxima are situated at different K points. But the moment we reduce their thickness to a single atomic layer or monolayer, the entire material band structure transforms from the indirect band gap to direct band gap, where both the conduction band minima and the valence band maxima are situated at the same K point. So keeping in view with this, we are trying to find out the electronic band structure of this monolayer molybdenum disulfide. So let us see whether we can do that using Burai. So coming back to our original discussion, how to get the crystal structure specification for molybdenum disulfide, I shall only write molybdenum disulfide and materials project and make a Google search. I can see here, this is the materials project library for the molybdenum disulfide. If I open this one, the crystal structure, the unit cell of the molybdenum disulfides are defined here. What is a unit cell? Unit cell is the lowest possible, smallest possible unit of a material, and repeating that unit in all XYZ direction, we can construct an infinite crystal of that particular material. So this is how the unit cell of a molybdenite look like. Remember, this is not a monolayer of molybdenum disulfide. Rather, it is the bulk layer molybdenite. I have to take this particular molybdenite and from there I have to make it a monolayer of the molybdenum disulfide. So what I shall do, I shall open this materials project library, I will go to the zip file, and from there I will download the computed zip file for this particular material. Once I download this, in my download folder, I'll be able to see that the downloaded zip file. I shall take this downloaded zip file and put it onto the working directory of my Burai. Now it's time for me to open my Burai. Here I have downloaded and installed my Burai into this location. I will go into this Burai package. Under the bin folder, I shall find out the executable of the Burai. So if I click on this Burai, I'll be able to open my Burai software. It is quite straightforward and easy to operate with the Burai. The first thing that I should do, since I have kept my downloaded molybdenite crystal structure specification into my working directory, I shall go to my working directory, which is download, under which I have a folder named hands-on, and here under TMD I have my downloaded crystal structure. So this is the crystal structure that is Burai showing me. Now if I'm trying to find out how this crystal structure, how to visualize this crystal structure from the unit cell, there is an easy way to do it. Let me, for example, click on here and go to the modeler option. In the modeler option, let me try to repeat this unit cell in the X and Y direction. This is the Z direction, the normal direction. Let me repeat the unit cell X and Y direction and try to see how the material is looking like. You see, just now the Google searched image that we have seen, it is showing like the exact same thing. So from the top, molybdenum and the sulfur atoms are alternatively placed in a hexagonal honeycomb structure. Now if I wanted to see it from the side view, I can see it like this. This is the individual layer of the molybdenum sulfide, and this is creating a bulk molybdenum sulfide material or the molybdenite material. But this is not going to serve our purpose because we need a single layer of this. So how to do? How to get a single layer of this? Let us see whether we can construct it properly from here. So since I do not want it to have the supercell, I shall come back to my original file that I have downloaded and opened from Google. The first thing that I shall do, I will delete one atomic layer from this unit cell structure. I will go to the unit file. In the unit file, I shall delete one molybdenum, one sulfur, and the second sulfur atom one by one. So once I do it, this would be a single layer of molybdenum sulfide, right? But this is not sufficient itself because I need to increase the unit cell lattice vector in the out of plane direction or the Z direction. Until and unless it is not going to work as a monolayer, because the density functional theory framework take the unit cell and automatically consider its repetition in all XYZ direction. But I do not want to having the interaction of the other atomic layer from top and bottom. So I must provide a sufficient space or vacuum between the top layer and the bottom layer so the individual layers are ignorant about the presence of the other layers in top and bottom. So the way to do it, change the unit cell lattice vector, let's say into 25. And this is how my entire crystal structure should look like. If I wanted to understand once again how this particular crystal structure will behave like a unit cell, behave like a monolayer of molybdenum sulfide, I shall once again go to the modeler. Okay, so let me quickly do the steps once again. There might be some issues with the modeler. That's it. So from here, I shall go to modeler once again. Here, if I repeat this structure like this, I will have it like this. Here you can see the individual atomic layer in the top and bottom are far apart from each other because I have increased the c-axis lattice vector for this hexagonal lattice. And since I increased them to 20 angstrom, this top layer would be indifferent of the presence of this bottom layer. Or in other words, if I simulate this structure, there would be no interaction between the two adjacent layer from top and bottom. So basically I am simulating the single layer of the molybdenum sulfide by increasing the unit cell lattice vector in the c-axis. So coming back to my original hands-on discussion, what I am going to do next, I am going to once again come back to input file, and here I can start a calculation. I can come to the cell specification, and here we will note an important thing. If I go and try to find out the unit cell lattice vector of the molybdenum sulfide, for example, if I make a Google search, MOS2 unit cell parameters, I shall see the lattice vector is 3.15 angstrom, which is given as 0.315 nanometer. But here in the Burai, I'm working with a molybdenum sulfide unit cell which has a lattice vector of 3.19. So I must change it to 3.15. This is the first thing that I'm going to do. Now, since I have changed the lattice vector and increased the c-axis lattice vector, I need to optimize this structure so that the total energy and the force acting on the individual atom would be minimized. So from here, if I click, I will see there are a number of calculation options that are available here. And from here, I can opt for the optimize option. In the optimize option, these are the parameters that are given. So I am not going to change any one of these parameter, but rather I will re-click on here and I will run my particular simulation. So here, before running, I need to save this project. Let's say I'm going to save this project as MOS2 demo. So I will save this project. Now, if I click OK, the optimization simulation will start running. But I don't want to run it here because it will take some time. I have already done all the simulation. I will directly come to the discussion of this simulation themselves. So here, this is the project that I have. This is the calculation that I have priorly calculated. So here, let's say if I run the optimization calculation on this unit cell of molybdenum sulfide, what I'm going to get after optimization, that would be found by clicking on the results. So here, these three opt block will come after optimization, geometry optimization of the unit cell. So first of all, if I wanted to look how the energy is getting optimized, you see with increasing iteration, the energy is gradually reducing and finally it is getting saturated. So my system has reached its minimum energy states or ground state. Similarly, if I come into the force optimization block, I can see the forces on the individual atom, both molybdenum and sulfur, are gradually reducing and eventually it is getting constant with increasing iteration. And as a whole, the total system, total force on the system is also saturating. So my force is also optimized. So these are the two parameters that I need to optimize through structural optimization of any materials. Once I have successfully optimized my structure, The next thing would be to perform a simulation on that particular SCF simulation on that particular structure. What is a SCF simulation? SCF is basically a self-consistent field simulation. After performing the self-consistent field simulation, I can go for both band and the DOS simulation. So if I click on the SCF simulation, once again I can see all the parameters are given for this simulation. Only one thing that I'm going to change here, I shall increase the K point sampling from 441 to 881 so that my result become more reliable. But I should not take it to 2021 or 5051 because that will exponentially increase the runtime of my simulation. The 881 or 10101 is more or less, as a rule of thumb, is a sufficient K point sampling for any 2D materials. So keeping in view with this, I will only make changes on this K point sampling, and afterwards, just like I have performed the geometry optimization simulation, here I shall run the optimization simulation for, I shall run the SCF simulation for the unit cell of MOS2. Once again, I have run this simulation beforehand. So if I go to this simulated project, after simulating, I shall get this log of SCF as well as the SCF energies here. So this is how my total energy of the system has been gradually reduced and reaches the ground state after the SCF simulation. So there is nothing more to see in the SCF simulation. So I will quickly come to the band structure simulation. This is where we have started simulating the energy band structure using Burai. So here, after SCF simulation, the next step would be the band simulation. I will click on the band simulation, and the number of bands that I need to simulate for the material can be automatically suggested by Burai. So if I click on this green button over here, the number of band, optimized number of band would be taken as 21. So I shall take 21 band. Now there is something I need to know, since it's a hexagonal material, the high symmetry point, maybe I shall draw it quickly. Can I draw it quickly by using an whiteboard? I might have mentioned the name of Brillouin zone before, but I haven't expressed it at length because it is indeed very difficult to get all the ideas clarified in a single session, but I'm trying my best. This is how the Brillouin zone of any hexagonal crystal will look like. Since the MOS2 is a hexagonal crystal, its Brillouin zone will look like this. So there are certain high symmetry points. The center of the Brillouin zone is known as gamma point. The corner of this Brillouin zone over here is known as K point, and the middle of this point for this edge is known as M point. So I shall move into this Brillouin zone in this manner. So my Brillouin zone sampling would be G to M, M to K, and K to G. So this sampling is sufficient to estimate the electronic properties or the electronic band structure of my hexagonal material. So based on this understanding, I shall come back here, and here, first of all, I will increase the number of points for band structure calculation so that the band look like more uniform. And as you can see, I have traversed from gamma to M, M to K, and K to gamma point. All other points that are been mentioned here are not necessary for my band structure simulation. So one by one, I shall delete them. I will only keep these 4 high symmetry point into my band structure simulation, across which I shall run my band structure simulation and get the overall band structure. So once again, I shall come here and run the simulation. Once I run the simulation, I can get my simulated energy band structure. Here you see a block of band has been created once I run the band structure simulation. So if I click on this is how the energy band structure of the single layer or mono layer of molybdenum sulfide should look like. You see, just like in the literature we have seen here, I will come back to that particular plot here. The monolayer band structure should have the conduction band minima and valence band maxima at the K point of the Brillouin zone. And this is a direct band gap material. Similarly, in this case also, I can see both the minimum of the conduction band and the maximum of the valence band are lying at the K point. So I have exactly replicated the reported band structure for a monolayer of molybdenum sulfide by going through my simulation. So only the one thing is left to do in this case, to perform the density of state simulation. So once again from here, if I come and choose the density of state simulation, I can see once again the number of bands I need to readjust to 21. If I just click, automatically the number of bands would be indicated here. Now rest of the parameters over here I don't need to change for my initial calculation or my initial stage of exploration in Burai. And if I just once again run the simulation, I shall get my density of state simulation, and the block name by DOS will be created over here. So if I come to this particular block, I shall see my density of states for the molybdenum sulfide would be looking like this. You see, this is the, somewhere around here, this is the zero energy, which means this is the position of the Fermi level. And there are no electronic states around the Fermi level, indicating this is indeed the energy band gap of a monolayer of molybdenum sulfide, or the forbidden gap within which no energy, within which no allowed electronic states are there. Once I have reached the conduction band minima, number of electronic states are gradually increasing. And if I wanted to see the splitting of this electronic state, who is contributing to them, I can see this red one here is contributed by the molybdenum, and the blue one here is contributed by the sulfur. So both molybdenum and sulfur are contributing to the electronic states in the molybdenum sulfide near the conduction band edge. A similar story can be observed if I go below valence band edge. The number of electronic states are quickly increasing, and as a result of this, here I can see the overall density of states profile will assume a value like this. So if you can recall from your electronic device lectures, near the band edges, I can always approximate a parabolic density of states profile if I am quite close to the band edges. And that is also can be verified from this particular profile over here. Very close to the band edges, as if the density of states is parabolically increasing. Actually, it is increasing as a square root of energy. So I shall have this square root dependence of energy for the density of states, and I can see the individual contribution from the individual atom in the crystal structure. So this is how we analyze the entire electronic properties of a unknown material through the computational material science approach using density functional theory. I have been explained everything in a very hurriedly manner. If any of the participants have any question regarding both theoretical and the practical aspect, I'd be happy to discuss.
Thank you, sir, for your excellent presentation and valuable session. Along with hands-on experience, we are very delighted to learn the new software called Burai. Along with that, we have learned a lot of hands-on for the future researchers. I think researchers and the PhD research scholars and researchers in this field may utilize this opportunity to work further in this domain. I request participants, those who are having queries, please raise your queries. Platform is open for you.
Next, uh, what is the question is how this practice is done? What is the benefit of going with that each day? Okay, then this structure, you don't need to this.
Or if you are facing any mic problems, you can chat in the chat box. We are ready to read the questions to the speaker. You are also welcome to chat the questions.
Is made of letter B. Okay. The only thing
I think there is no questions from the audience side. So the thing seems to be very clear. We hope so. So if there is any questions, you can directly share your thoughts or views with the speaker. He is ready to help you in this aspect. Hope so. So in this menu, I thank Dr. Shayan Kanugo for his kind consult and for his valuable presentation during this session. We are very delighted. On behalf of participants, I express my sincere thanks to you, sir, for giving your consent and joining. Thank you very much, sir, on behalf of SR University. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Joseph. Thank you, participants. It is indeed a pleasure to be able to present before you. So in case you have any queries or anything, do let me know through email. I'd be happy to assist you in any way possible afterwards. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, sir. Once again, thank you very much. So I request the participants to fill the feedback form for this session 3. Already the link is shared in your WhatsApp group as well as in the chat. Those who have registered the session will get the certificates. Other can gain the knowledge. That is, certificate is better. The knowledge is better than gaining a certificate. So registered participants, please kindly help us by filling the feedback form.
from
Thank you once again. Tomorrow we will start the session by 10:20 a.m. Please join the session and make the things valuable. Thank you very much.
so